Quiet.
I didn't mute the mic. Good timing on the dog.
Nope.
But that's okay. We are going live. Welcome.
It's going to be awesome.
Welcome. We're going to swap. Yay.
Oh my
Look,
goodness.
we're checking it out. There's audio. Cassie has her. Oh, you should mute everything. Okay.
I muted.
I'm doing the same. Boomski.
Oh,
hello.
I bet I just got a package. That's why the dog barked.
That is exactly what just happened. Cassie got a package. How
Should I get
could
it?
you? Yes, go ahead and grab it. I don't know that there's anybody here yet. That's okay. I'm going to continue posting. I'm going to worry less about what is happening. It says there's one person, and I think it's counting Cassie.
Nothing there.
It wasn't there. You didn't check. We didn't even think about it.
There's supposed to be a book about David Bowie. It was important.
Didn't even think about it. Exactly.
Didn't even think about it. Okay.
Anyways. Oh, okay, yeah. So I have a Google Doc open. And I was going to post real quick in the Absolute Tabletop group. Cassie, if you could tell us. Look, I get to look at Cassie now, and she's right there instead of next to me. Nobody's here to appreciate that yet, I think.
Not yet.
But let's talk about people that live in the trees. Tell me about why. Tell me something about people that live in the trees.
So, long story short, just like having a casual day, whatnot, and I had a shower thought. Realized that, oh man, people live in trees. I feel like that's not the best idea. Like, what if there's just a stiff wind and you live like on some of the thinner branches, which was a thing that happened in a book that I was reading recently. Basically, the less well off you are, the further you live away from the trunk and basically on the outer branches. And they mentioned them being pretty close to the top. And earlier that day I had been outside, just hanging out, probably doing some reading, and I looked up and of course the trees are just going crazy because there was a good wind.
A good stiff wind.
And I was thinking that, oh man, that's actually a really lousy place to kind of live. Like, you couldn't have it, everything would have to be bolted down onto whatever you're bolted to, I suppose, your branches.
Yeah, right? It would need to be. So, but yeah, so Cassie brought up the concept that living in the trees is not very helpful or reasonable, in a sense, I think. And so what we wanted to do was come up with some ways to make it more helpful and more reasonable.
Yeah. Because there are other things that we looked into, too, that seemed odd. I think you brought up a good one, which was, like, sewage. What do you do with that?
So, yeah, sewage is a very good example of a problem that I see with people living in trees.
Yeah.
One of many problems. Where do you get things? Hey, Jason's here. Hey, Jason.
Hi.
So, yes, one of the many problems is things like sewage. Where do you get things? How do they farm? What do they eat? There are all kinds of issues. And I don't think we would have to figure out all of them.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, the dog's excited. I don't think we'd have to necessarily figure out all of those problems, but what figuring out some of them will do will hopefully make cool parts of the world. It'll make the world interesting in a way that we wouldn't have been able to if we didn't do it that way. So one of the first things I wanted to start off with is there are a lot of different types of tree cities.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can do it all kinds of ways. So what kind of trees do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about really big trees that people live inside of, or small trees that people build stuff onto, or what do you think? Do you want to make a tree people, or do you want to talk about tree people that exist first?
Let's start with the ones that exist.
Okay.
That's going to be easier, I think.
So you mentioned in a book you were reading.
Yes.
The rich people live closer to the trunk.
Yes.
And the poor people live further out. I imagine if people live in the trees, if there's no ground for them to go to, or it's like far too dangerous.
Right. I think in the book's case, it's just that they lived kind of in the swampy area called the Rain Wilds, so I imagine they have bad weather pretty frequently. And one of their concerns was flooding,
Oh, okay, yeah, they lived in the trees potentially because it flooded so bad that it was worth it to figure out what it would take to live in the trees because you can't live on the ground. It's just impossible, right?
But we don't know how bad it actually is. I am like a couple books deep now, and it doesn't take place in the city anymore.
Yeah, and that's where I think that we
Yeah.
can move away from what the book is or what the book did or how the book works. And do you want to make one, or do you want to... I'm trying to think of what to do. Because basically, I think we should start making decisions about ours. I think we should have one,
Oh, okay.
and we should start making decisions about it.
All right.
So does it matter yet the way the people live? We talked before about a bird that had blades on its wings
Oh, yeah.
that would fly through the treetops. Now, this was completely separate from this conversation that we're having now.
Yep. It was
but-
a little animal concept that we had been talking about because I learned about how adaptive, I guess, how awesome feathers are, basically, and they're just made out of keratin. So I wondered, and keratin, like, becomes the scales in a pangolin, it becomes a rhino's horn, it's a very versatile protein. So I was thinking, why doesn't it make, like, blade-like structure as, like, a feather that runs along the front? And that was a concept that we had for making a little blade-winged parrot companion.
Yeah, it was a parrot.
It was going to be a parrot kind of thing.
Yeah, so we're going to call that the blade-winged parrot. It doesn't have to be. But the reason I'm putting this down is because at the time, we sort of started talking about what people living in the trees would look like, because we understood that, or we were trying to figure out, I think, how the bird would fit in with a society. We're making it for, it's for the creature book, coming up with different creatures that people can use in their worlds, and we started talking about the symbiosis between the bird and the society that would live around it.
Yeah.
It's a bird, so presumably up in the trees. So we're going to mash those two things together for now.
Yes.
But what that means is this bird flying through sort of dense treetops of probably pretty enormous trees. We're not entirely sure yet, but there's no, like, ground, right? The ground is only what you make so far.
Right. So right now we're not worried about the ground.
Yeah, no
Right,
ground,
okay.
exactly. But the idea is you have these birds that are flying around, cutting these paths in the trees so that they can move around.
Yeah.
So we talked about how it would make sense potentially that the people would use those too. Whether they trained the birds to cut the things for them, or they followed the birds, and used the natural pathways that the birds create for themselves as where they would build their bridges and stuff.
Yeah.
Or a little bit of both.
I think that would definitely be the starting point.
Yeah.
Start with what the birds give you.
So it's the symbiosis with the people that live here.
Hello, Fabricio.
Fabricio, hello, good evening from Brazil. We just watched a TV show where they went to Brazil. The Solar Opposites Season 2 is on Hulu, and they go to Brazil.
Oh my gosh.
And they fly over Rio, and they do a joke about what's it called? It's the statue, but it's from, it's...
Oh, the Jesus Christ, the Christ...
Yes, Christ the Redeemer. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. You looked at me like, I don't know, and I'm like, you know. So
I know, yeah.
I'm very sorry, Fabricio. I'm sure that I suppose I'm not sure of this, but I'm sorry that if the Christ the Redeemer is the thing that comes up every time you mention Brazil, but that is what it made me think of. But hello, all of that to say. So, but we have the blade-winged parrots. We have people that live in the trees.
Yes.
I'm going to say tree tops, but there are trees above them. So in the trees. People that live in and near the tree tops.
Are these people going to be smaller? Because we had a brief discussion earlier today that the smaller you are, then a fall from a greater height, say a tree, is going to be less damaging than if I was my size.
Absolutely. And that applies for everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you're building, gravity is less strong on the smaller building materials and we're talking tiny. So we considered one of the constraints we were putting on this world to make the creatures in it tiny, or if you think of it another way, the world so big that they were tiny in scale from what we're used to. Like borrowers. You know what I mean? Kind of like that size,
That's
right?
small?
Like tiny. Well, that's what I mean. Well, what do you think? Like Ewoks are relatively small, right? They
Ewoks are small. Yeah,
It's a good excuse for them living in the trees.
If you wanted to, we could make a culture/race, however you want to define it, that is different, but say the size of an Ewok, or we could go the borrower's route and make like fairies.
And if you think about it, if you make tiny people,
Which I'm not sad either.
one cool thing you get from making tiny people is suddenly the world looks so different because everything being bigger includes like bugs.
Yeah.
Bugs are so different at that scale. And if you live in a tree, bugs are going to be there.
Yes.
Right? Some ants are like, I don't know, rats in our world, probably bigger even than rats. You know, where they're like a pest that's like, oh, we need to get rid of these ants.
The sugar ants. Sugar ants would be the rats.
Oh,
or mice.
yeah.
They'd be
The
like
mice,
little
yeah.
harmless
The
ones.
tiny ones. Exactly. Like, oh, we got sugar ants, but it's like mice crawling in. So, so we're going to scale down the people potentially. Because, yeah, like a praying mantis shows up. That's bad news, you know?
Yeah.
So we don't have to
Yes.
go that way.
Okay.
But that's one of many ways to, in a way, solve people living that high in the trees.
Okay.
Because it would be so dangerous that it would
How
be
about
more
like
worth it.
6-inch people? Is that
6
what
inch
we're
people? Yeah, yeah,
6
right?
inch
6
people,
inch
okay.
people, right? That was a
We'll
dollar
say.
bill and a U.S. American dollar bill is 6 inches. But if you think about that, a 6-inch person can ride a bird potentially, right?
Oh, yeah.
And depending on how fantasy you go, little fantasy, suddenly you can tame birds and, they have them and they're using them as, like, transportation and stuff.
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, as well as with bugs. So we'll say that they're small.
We'll say that
People
they're-
live in and near the treetops.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be a tree dweller, it's going to be very beneficial to be smaller on the small side.
Yes. So
Yes.
what I'm going to put here, this is a ridiculous way to describe it, but we're using the scale of our world,
Yeah.
the people would be 6 inches. 6 inches tall, roughly, as an adult, if the trees were the same size as our world.
Okay. Yes, if they were the same size as them.
Because the important thing is, the world scale is hard.
Yes.
But, like, imagine it's our world and people are 6 inches, but don't imagine that humans live on it, right? We're not adding the extra facet of also there are big creatures, giants.
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Because in this case, like, if we have these little people, the parrots are separate from this.
I suppose so.
Separate from this world.
Yes, yeah. In this case, the parrots don't work as well because those are a regular-sized thing. Now, there could also be... Oh, I guess there can't be tiny creatures. That defeats the purpose of the scale thing we're doing.
There's already tiny things. They're called bugs.
That's what I mean. Like, you can't have small birds and then also big birds. Like, I confused myself there in a way.
But there are small and big birds. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, yeah. I think you know what I mean. No, but like... Okay, so, yes, I think that would be different because now we have people, it's so different, to have people living in trees. Because the trees can still be enormous. Like, you imagine redwoods, right? That's like an enormous place that you can carve out. But, okay, so what you have, I think, is like, it's almost like miners. Because if you think of how a tree works, it would work a lot like a mine would if the tree is as big as a mountain, basically. And if you have to carve out that space to live in it, Because we talked about living on the outside of it, but I think it would be a big mixture. I think that if the trees would be this big and we've decided on tiny people, I think that it makes perfect sense for them to live in the trees, but there's no reason for them to... there's no reason for them to live on the outside necessarily if they could live on the inside. Does that make sense?
I'm looking up right now to see if... there's the tunneled trees, the redwoods that James brought up. I'm looking up right now to see... if they're actually still alive or not after they're carved out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if trees can, like, kind of keep growing around stuff. I mean, we do see
I
that,
think
actually.
so,
We see
yeah.
that in real life. But this is different because it's carved out. It's not grown around, something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they'll cut out a whole path, basically, for people to drive through. But this tree is now big enough so you can see on either side of a road, right? Like, you're talking enormous redwoods.
So it looks like the tunneling inflicted, this is from Wikipedia, the tunneling inflicted severe damage to the health and strength of these trees. Tunnels were cut to stimulate automobile tourism. Oh my gosh, I should not read stuff.
You should probably try not to read stuff right now. I think.
Okay, so don't tunnel. Probably don't tunnel into a tree. Don't tunnel
Generally,
into a tree.
but that's the thing. In our world, we may need that.
I think so long as you don't go through the whole thing, just like a woodpecker doesn't go through the whole tree, but it's still able to tunnel.
I guess I'm there's a part of me that wants to hand wave that part of it to say it's like a Keebler elf's house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the tree keeps growing and we just because it works differently.
We can.
Right now, here's what are the other options. We can talk other options about Tree City, right? We can have them building stuff on the outside. No matter what, though, they have to take wood from the trees. Now that I say it out loud, like, what are their building materials?
They harvest just from a separate tree.
Yeah, right? Like,
Yeah.
they have to, like, go to a different area and get... Yeah, interesting. I don't know.
And then how do you get it up there? So that was another thing. Why would people even build cities in trees?
Yes,
Remember? You have to look for
we
some
did.
way.
Exactly. And so the thing is, we talked about that. Why would people live in trees? And if you talk at our scale now, we basically were talking about it, and it doesn't make any sense to live in the trees. It would be extremely difficult, dangerous. It would complicate a lot of things. Like because of gravity, we live on the ground.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense. Even you brought up that some people would even live in areas that would flood or something. They found different ways, right?
Yeah.
Some countries and some places are amazing at making their buildings earthquake proof in a way.
Yeah.
They don't not build on fault lines. They make things that work better on fault lines. You know what I mean? They go, if we're gonna have an earthquake, we're not gonna fall down. That's what we do. We're gonna build, but
and there's certainly places that people live on stilts and whatnot to deal with flooding.
exactly. And so all of that,
you can. Yeah.
all of that makes more sense than living in trees. So I think that the more we think about it, it would have to be one of those worlds that's in the trees, or like one of those places that's in the trees for a good reason.
Yeah.
But like it's an area of the world that, so for instance, in Dragongrin, there is a place called the Sea of Trees, or Ocean of Trees.
Yeah.
Ocean of Trees. And I think, the way we talked about it, and I believe the way it ended up making it into the book, is it's flat on top. Like when you see it from where you are and you look out over the Ocean of Trees, what did I say? See, I don't remember what it's called, guys.
Oh, just call it Ocean of Trees.
And they're all flat, and you see the canopy of the trees, like the tops. But if you go in, the trees are of varying heights. Like it's more like an ocean where you can't tell how deep it goes. You just see the
Okay.
top, right? The thing is, if you went in there and you saw, that would be a place where people could live in the trees, because also people live on the ground. Like not everybody in the whole world lives in the trees, but because then you just take the building materials and you get them, harvest them from land,
Yeah.
right? And then you bring them there. So you could build stuff out of wood. It'd be a pain, but I mean, especially like humans, we have made great feats of engineering, right? It
Yes.
wouldn't be unreasonable to say, all right, well, yeah, they went and they harvested a bunch of wood and they came and they built tree houses,
Like undoubtedly, that's going to be a thing that's
Yeah. So do you think
We
then
are
we
very
should go?
adaptive.
We won't go with carving. We'll go with more stuff built on top of the trees, on top of some of the different branches, that come out.
Yeah. So then the next thing to consider is that trees will stop growing up, but of course they put on a ring every year, so they still get wider.
Yeah.
So if you did say have a wraparound house or something around the trunk, that would eventually something would break.
Yeah. So it would be safer then to build onto a
Onto a side, just like how a birdhouse is.
yeah, and
Have,
I guess you're right. No matter you just wouldn't wrap it all the way around.
wouldn't have
That
to
kind
do
of
a wrap.
wouldn't make sense.
Don't wrap it.
I think that's how most people do it. Like a lot of fantasy drawings and different things, they wrap them around.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of the stuff I wrote. I guess the one thing is that the people are 6 inches tall. So, but okay. So in this world, is the only place, and we don't necessarily have to worry about this, but we can talk about this. Is the only place they live in the trees, or are there parts on land as well, like that, where it's like the Ewok villages? I mean, I guess that's not on the same world, but let me say this: what part of it do you want to brainstorm? Do you want to get to making people that will live up there? What do you think? Because we could start talking about how they interact with the insects and everything, and what sorts of ways they would sustain themselves if they were tiny, right? Because they'd probably eat grubs, right? Like hunting grubs. I don't know. That is really gross.
Ugh, bugs.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I suppose so. Yeah, what would it look like in the trees? Because then, okay, what do you have to compete with? So you have bugs, you have weevils that will bore into your tree, along with, woodpeckers. So some birds might want to play with you instead.
Oh, yeah.
You're small. And they, like a crow, I bet, would probably come around and harass people.
Oh, like for fun.
Yes.
Like not like, oh, we need to eat you, but yeah, just literally
Just
for
for
fun,
fun.
because, yeah.
So that would be something to deal with. How do you scare off a crow? Especially if it's smart.
And let's follow that a little bit.
Okay.
Because how would you scare off a crow? Let's go even further. We've seen cases where crows will like bring people stuff in exchange. Isn't that crows?
Yes.
Right? That's totally like in a way, I
You can
feel
teach
like
them.
the people would begin to have some symbiosis with full-size crows. Right now, these are enormous.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like one, maybe to them, it's the crow god or whatever. Like they probably wouldn't call it crows. I don't know. That's up for debate, I guess. But that idea that they would have this bird sometimes that if they give it this thing, it'll give them this other thing that they need.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like just trade with some of the crows because they're smart enough. I like that.
I was kind of thinking of what would that first interaction look like running into a crow, and I think the crow would kind of harass people. So it might, because they're able to remember faces and whatnot, it'll learn to not like, let's say myself. Let's say it's picking on me, so I'm defending myself, but it's going to learn that I'm not nice, basically because I'm trying to get to go away. But James comes along and starts to feed it, so he gets to be friends with the crow. I don't know.
Exactly.
Cool.
Like once somebody realizes, I can see a storyline where somebody realizes they can feed it. Right? We do have a few people in the chat here.
Hello, guys.
Acer says, hello all. Happy Sunday, everybody.
And Turd Rocket's back. Thanks
Turd
for
Rocket says, is this the same world as the Miyazaki-style one with the factory? I think I missed the last couple brainstorms. This is just a world. Yeah, we just wanted to talk through some stuff. The major thing is, a lot of times I will make a new world for this thing and this thing and this thing, and then eventually some of them will coalesce, like keeping them separate until they have to. So it'll seem like there's just a whole bunch of worlds floating around, but it could be is the easy answer to your question.
They're currently floating around, and eventually they'll get lines from one bubble to one bubble, and they'll start linking together. It'll be great.
Exactly. But the main thing is we were talking about tiny people, like if you imagine borrower style 6-inch like humanoids in trees. So not necessarily on a world with other things. What's another one that's like that? Not Gulliver's Travels. What's the one where they're cutting down the trees? Fern Gully. Fern Gully is another one. Now, those are fairies. You mentioned fairies earlier.
It's come up a lot lately.
Fern Gully has for you?
I was floating around, maybe it was on Reddit or Instagram, and there's something called a new Wizards of the Coast book.
Candlekeep? Tales from Candlekeep
Tales
or
from
something?
Candlekeep with the two fairies on front.
So
I feel like that's come up a lot as well.
Yeah, if people were the size of, I don't know what kind of fairies, from Fern Gully.
What's up, Cole?
Lived in the trees, but were just humans, not fairies. I don't know. Hey Cole, yeah, Cassie said that. Hello Cole. We're experimenting with using the Google Docs while we do it, and I just don't type anything in it, and it doesn't work. So tell me what you guys want to see in the doc. But that's supposed to be there to update people if they jump in later, so they can catch up, and it has not been helpful.
Oh, okay. We'll get there.
Well, like for me, yeah, we just ended up deleting stuff because we were brainstorming. But sort of Tom Thumb. Tom Thumb is another one. That's another really good one. So yes, but that idea where like the story is not necessarily about them finding out who the bigger people is. But, like, they just live in that world. I also like that they might have the classic tropes of using things that from the real world. I like that. I don't know if that'll go in, but the idea that, like, people have, containers or you see real-life things that are huge for humans. I guess they wouldn't exist in this world. I just love that concept.
Not in this world.
But that's another style. But Acer says, the video game Grounded just came out. The humans trying to live as tiny in a backyard. Living in a shoe. So, yeah.
So those are modern humans.
Yes, yeah.
Sounds like. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's like modern humans in the backyard of a human, I think that video game Grounded. But yeah, so we are talking about sort of fantasy humanoids that live in trees, in tree cities, probably not much else around them. There's no ground at this point. And, just sort of catching up and going in circles. But,
yeah. Oh man.
We were talking about the crows. Yes, they would have some of the symbiosis with crows, and then go ahead.
I was thinking that you would want to harvest like spider webs and whatnot to make for textiles.
Oh yes, absolutely. So like spider silk. I'm imagining a pretty advanced society, not necessarily like there's a lot of people. There's a high population, is what I'm imagining.
Yeah.
Floor is lava. Yeah, floor is lava, Cole.
We're not sure yet. We just haven't decided if the ground is a part of this world, really.
Exactly.
Or not.
Yeah, like they don't climb down. Now, of course, if you have a world where somebody lives up in the treetops and there's something below, I'm like, of course there's something down there.
There's
Like,
going to
totally.
be something below.
Could you fly using maple keys?
Maple
I don't know
leaves?
Oh, maybe.
Like the little seeds?
Yeah, I don't. I
Sail
just
on
didn't.
the
Maybe it was a typo. I just didn't know. I've never heard of that. But okay. So, it's the fruit of the maple tree, and it's that thing that spins around.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
So yes, I've never
The
heard it
seeds,
called that.
okay.
Keys. Yeah, I've never heard it called that. But I realized when you said it, I was like, oh, I'll have to look it up. Sail in walnut shells. The movie Epic is like that. That is another one. They are not fairies. They can fly, but they don't. But they do use birds to get around. We were talking about the birds. Using
And that-
birds to get around as well.
And I think that would absolutely happen because they're smart, and so long as you give them food, you can train a bird. you know?
Exactly. And so I'm imagining people living among the branches. That was the other thing I was going to say. I was imagining coniferous trees only, right?
Okay.
Tall, straight ones, but it wouldn't have to be.
Oh,
but I guess it would
absolutely.
have to be if they were that tall. I don't know.
Oh, I love the idea of a banyan tree, actually.
That's
as a
the
home.
thing. I like playing with something like that, where it's like enormous.
Like the banyan trees that we had, that I got to play around growing up, basically down in South Florida. They have these roots that look like basically really thick hairs, let's say, that come down from the branches. And once they actually hit the ground after they continuously grow, then they kind of form up into a root. And they're really cool.
Yeah, I
Should I
think.
f- I
No,
can
yeah.
probably
Let
find
me
a picture.
see if.
I think they're
Banyan
better be
tree.
called banyan trees.
No, it is. But
Okay.
I need to see if OBS will update. Yeah. Oh, it's only part of it though.
They were
it's
so
fine.
fun to play in though as a kid. So I think that would actually be a really cool one.
Yeah. Oh boy. It is. Yeah. Sorry, everybody. It's not set up, but you see the type of tree. You get it there.
You get it.
But yeah. So okay. But talking banyan trees then. In that case,
Cause that would be really cool.
Yeah, I like that because now really what we've described are we have something living up
yeah.
there.
Okay.
What? Yeah.
I like the image. So that last image that you actually had up on screen,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that because they get so dense in the middle, that you could have a little like communal area that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where people could gather, have little houses or what have you. I don't know. It's very
Exactly.
cool.
So now, what I need you to imagine is we saw a really poorly cropped because of the way Google Docs, because I said the Google Docs up, image of a banyan tree. So there's a kind of tree going all over the place. Now, if you imagine tiny people, but that tree is the size it is in our world, or bigger,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of them, you wouldn't necessarily know what was above you or what was below you depending on how far people could get.
Right.
So imagine instead that we're not going to talk about the floor, not because it doesn't exist, but because they don't know what it is. They don't have a concept of a ground. The world is all trees. You know what I mean?
All right.
Like they're tiny. And
Like
yeah.
that's just not something that has been explored yet.
Yes, in their minds,
Okay.
they don't live in a tree. They live on the world, and the world is a tree, and maybe they call it a tree, but maybe they don't even call it a tree. But that idea that, like, no, their ground is tree, and
So-
that's why they live there.
Yeah, so Cole's right. The tree would be their whole world.
Exactly.
basically.
But what that means is you can have people that believe in something like these all connect somewhere. The world we live in all connects and attaches to something that, gives it life. Describing a tree having roots in the earth.
Yeah.
But to them, it's this highly revered concept because it sounds crazy. Suddenly, what everybody lives on and what you grow on is about, it sort of encompasses the religion now, or
Right.
what some people believe, or maybe the spiritualism. I like ideas like that. So yes, they would live there, but what it also means is they'd be highly interconnected, and you'd have a lot of what you said, where you'd have communities in the interiors,
Yeah.
and then some of the, literally branching out.
Flat earthers.
Yeah.
We could
Who don't
say,
believe anything exists outside the tree. I love that.
Exactly. We could say that with these, like maybe the banyan tree, so it's not our base is a banyan tree. Maybe it forms kind of like a little bit of a cup in the center.
Yeah.
Almost like a little hillside. oh man, like what if the little communities make like tiny trellises and they try to farm up there? Like that'd be so cute.
Yeah, exactly. Because now that we're thinking that big,
Yeah.
there are large flat portions sometimes. Like, that's what I was saying earlier. I imagine them
Mega trees. They'd have
yes,
to be huge.
exactly. But they're pretty. The society in a way is advanced in some ways, like as far as agriculture and farming, and that would look very different. Because if they grow berries that are normal size, to them they're huge and they cut them up. It's more like their berries are more like livestock, where it's like we don't eat a whole cow, we take one small part of it. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just imagining that. But the idea you mentioned, spider silk, I'm imagining now that they would harvest spider silk similar to the way they would harvest what's it called, wool.
Yeah.
Where you have to have the animals and keep them happy and everything, and you can take some of the spiders, but it's a symbiotic relationship in that the spiders, if they wanted to, could probably kill you, but
Oh yeah. Like
it works for them because you give them, you know what I mean? Like you work together to get it. And yeah, just like throwing ideas out of, I like the idea of there's the spider farm. But, like, you don't go there because the spiders will kill you. You know what I mean? Like, if you go... yeah.
I totally get it. I agree. It should be kind of a farm, and then I'm imagining a team of people go out there, one person or a small, let's say 1 or 2 people, basically distract it off the web so that the other people can then, pull the strings and basically collect it.
Exactly.
And then they get out of there.
And Cole says domesticated spiders. Not quite domesticated, right? Certainly not pets. Just more like... The spiders don't worry about it because maybe when they distract them with food.
Yeah.
And so the spider's like, all right, like the spiders are aware of what's happening, but they don't mind because they go, hey, where's the food?
And talking about spiders, I know that for some communities, jumping spiders are actually really kind of considered cute. And I agree, they're very interesting. They're smart as far as spiders go. And because they're so tiny, I bet some people would definitely want to have those as pets.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah, like really tiny ones?
Small. Yeah, because like we have some that I find just outside, but I can easily imagine if I was even like 6 inches, like that thing is still too small.
Yeah.
It could probably hurt, but yeah.
Well, but exactly, and that's the thing. Some animals that we have, or bugs that we have.
Sorry, Cole. Yeah, for a lot of people, spiders are terrifying. I don't know. But that could be an option.
Exactly. Oh, so Dylan says, a tree so big that there would be different factions depending on where the people live in the tree. Canopy, roots, trunk. So that's actually something that somebody else was exploring that we were talking about a little bit, where for them, it was the closer to the trunk you are,
they were more wealthy.
The more wealthy, and then the further out you get, the more poor.
But so that was correct. Their tree, though, was, I imagine, like your typical tree. They didn't explain it in the book.
Exactly. Yeah. So the major thing is there would be different factions in different areas, and I think similar to any other map, there would be some parts that people were, and then the rest wouldn't be. I'm imagining that there aren't a lot of far communities, right? There's very little globalization. There's like a few small communities, and that's kind of it.
Yes.
They don't know of anything else. There might be people in other parts of this world or something, but they're kind of isolated.
They're isolated because they're just so small and it's dangerous. It's such rugged terrain to get anywhere.
And so saying that, that's the main thing, is there would be other factions and stuff, and occasionally somebody that nobody's ever met could show up, but usually it's kind of inter-community problems, it seems.
Because that's how it was... I mean, this is just a little bit. There was a lot of factors, but partly because like some of the Amazonian tribes and whatnot weren't bigger or more interconnected. More recently, not in the far past, is because also the terrain. It might be.
Well, but like you said, in this case, it does make sense that the terrain makes it a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
The terrain... It's different. You can't just walk and explore. You can't just take a boat and it's so different. You have to blaze a trail and you have to potentially mark it, and it's like mountain climbing to explore. In every case.
I think. So Cole had a cool question.
Yeah.
What are squirrels? I think. I don't think we'd like squirrels. They still want to have. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is we haven't talked about animals since we've talked about the banyan tree concept of all these interconnecting.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't have them, but I'm now imagining we've turned a few dials a little more to move a little further away from like Fern Gully style stuff. and we're pushing more into tweaking stuff a little bit. So,
Yeah.
like, what about... So we talked about the crows as well. Imagine that the animals...
All these animals can be befriended to some extent, but they are still competition for resources.
Yeah,
That's what we're trying to find.
So imagine that imagine that the animals are so big and well equipped that they don't vie for the same resources.
Okay.
Like, crows wouldn't necessarily eat the same things these people eat. I don't know what they would eat, I guess. Because the crows would, right? Like, I'm imagining they're so big. A crow would eat another thing that's pretty big. Like, what do crows usually eat?
They're
Flesh,
omnivorous. Right? Yeah, I believe. I'm going to double check.
So I guess I could see them, like, eating people's... I feel like squirrels would be a pest, always trying to get into the food supplies. That's the main thing. Suddenly I realized if there were a lot of creatures running around, squirrels would wreak havoc on these people. Like, basically, in a sense, we can't have squirrels.
I was thinking that squirrels would be akin to how some people here in the South, like, see wild pigs as, like, a nuisance. Getting into their crops and whatnot. Basically, and if we're 6 inches, that squirrel is basically the size of us, right? If we're 6-inch people, yeah, that squirrel's
bigger,
as big as you.
Twice as big. I mean, I guess squirrels aren't a foot tall. I don't know what I'm talking about. I said that. Wait, that's not right.
Crows eat a vast variety of foods, grains, seeds, nuts, fruits, berries, and many kinds of small animals such as earthworms and mice.
Okay. That's what I mean. I imagine they're attacking the mice more, but
we're a little too big.
But I guess part of me was considering making animals an extremely rare occurrence and something that the people revere greatly, right? So taking it and even though moving away from our original concept a little bit, having it more like the person that trades with the crow is, like, revered. That's a special thing, you know, and they pass it down to their children, but really the crow it is real life, where the crow is just like, no, you trained me. You trained me to do the thing, you know?
What if, for that crow thing, for that position, I know this is brainstorming on this little
totally,
thing. What if it's, instead of a certain person, so that way it can be passed down, it's a mask that you wear. So that way, even if, I passed away and I was friends with the crows, so long as you have that mask, they're still going to recognize you.
Exactly, like it's... I really like that. Okay, so a few things... they're a foot long, though. I was thinking if they're standing up, so like them and their tail. And maybe they're taller than I think. I see them a lot, but from very far away, so... crows normally eat carcasses, Turd Rocket says. Yeah, and that's the main thing, is I thought they'd be eating much bigger things, but it's fair that they would... The societies would be big enough that the crows would eventually see a farm of strawberries and be like, all right, I'm going to eat those, you know.
Hey, Jonathan Miles.
Cole says squirrels are the size of cattle or horses. I guess so. That's the thing. They could be smaller, but I feel like we might not have squirrels. We'll see. Jonathan Miles, hey, what's up? Cassie said that, of course. Turd Rocket, they're scavengers and often follow wolves and other predators around. I think you're talking about crows to feed the kills of larger predators. And I do like that idea, like that you create a situation where people are sacrificing gifts to animals, and it's working because really the animal is going, okay, I'm not going to kill you because I do want those sacrifices. Like, you keep giving me food, I'm going to keep coming back, you know, when you're wearing the mask. I don't know. What do you think about stuff like that? Because that would affect a lot of the world.
I see how it can easily become that, because why wouldn't, especially with a smarter bird kind of deal.
Basically, do you think it's okay? The focus doesn't have to be on that, right? It can be other types of stories. We haven't really talked about what people's jobs are or what adventures would be like, but I'm imagining that some people have a sigil of a crow, you know, in their house. Like, I don't know, just like trying to consider what that would do to the world. But I wanted to make sure it wasn't doing anything to the world that you didn't like.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I'm super open to it.
Because that would just be like some people, you know, like, of the crow, and they do a thing, you know. It would just be a thing in the world, you know.
But maybe, so I'm not sure about squirrels. Maybe it'll be a slightly different creature. Like, let's say, oh man, I don't know. I think it would be cool to use a different creature instead of a squirrel, because we can go off of the fact that maybe this is a tropical place. We haven't set what kind of biome.
I think it'd be pretty tropical. Like, yeah, good call.
I'm like, I like to make some different animals, so I'd probably do that.
Yeah.
You know?
So Jonathan says, I mean, that's how domestication works typically. You train the animal to rely on you as a food source.
Yep.
But
That's
the main
true.
thing here is it's more like, it is just like that. But that's what's interesting is what I'm saying is that the people are ascribing more to that.
So more respect towards the creature because, let's say, it's surely bigger than you.
Exactly.
You know?
It could kill all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the crow could just walk around eating these little 6-inch people. But instead, because we give it this thing every once in a while, maybe something shiny, maybe something to build its nest, like, I can see stories being caught up in people arguing over what they should give the crow.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm just imagining all the conflict it would cause of ascribing all this extra stuff to, no, we just started feeding a bird and it started recognizing us because we were wearing a mask, and now it's a part of a religion, you know?
Yeah.
Cole says, I would like to see squirrels or chipmunks in a hamster wheel type thing to run elevator machinery or something. I do like stuff like that. That is really interesting, as somebody mentioned beetles as beasts of burden, but in general having beasts of burden or things that could, because we don't know what they would do for power if they had power.
I don't imagine they'd have much.
No, and I don't
I
think
always
so,
pictured
yeah.
like stairs.
I know. I think it'd mostly be stairs and stuff, and that's where it depends on exactly how much you want to do, because they don't have metal, right? They probably don't have metal, so they would have a hard time making many of the things we're used to. That's going to be an interesting constraint.
But as we've seen, like with a lot of architecture and whatnot, like there's so much possibility with wood. as long as
Oh
you
yeah,
craft
but
it
that's
correctly.
that's what's interesting. What about everything else that's metal? I was concerned less about architecture, but like,
Okay.
I don't know, do they have armor? We don't have to talk about that, but immediately I just thought, wow, they don't have metal. And that's going to be interesting. But Turd Rocket, where did turtles fit into this? So this all takes place on the back of the world turtle, and then that turtle is on it. It's turtles all the way down, really.
Turtles all the way down.
Turtles all the way down. Cool, so you rarely see them in trees. So it's Family Robinson type architecture. Yes, a lot of Swiss Family Robinson type architecture. So this means nothing.
Swiss Family Robinson.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. So it was a story, I believe, but specifically I know it from in the Disney parks. They created the Swiss Family Robinson thing. Like, you go see it. It's like a attraction, is what I want to say. And I knew a woman. I worked at a barbecue restaurant for a while, and a woman would come in, and it was an older woman. She was in her 70s, and she had retired. She used to work at Disney, and she was one of the major people that worked on the Swiss Family Robinson here in Florida. So that was really cool.
Okay.
Her
I see
name
what
was
you're talking
Patsy.
about.
I haven't seen her in a while. I don't work at that restaurant, but she was just the sweetest old lady.
This treehouse is so cool. I'm gonna. put
Yeah,
it in
the Swiss
chat.
Swiss Family Robinson treehouse. Now Cassie's just looking it up.
Yep, there it is, everybody.
Oh yeah,
But,
so Jonathan
yeah,
said
that looks
bark
so cool.
armor. You could also make the bark as hard as metal. I was immediately thinking there are things like ironwood, like there'd be different types of trees, and you'd get different resources from
Yeah.
them.
And talking about, somebody brought up a case system earlier. What, James? What?
Sorry, yeah.
He had
yeah.
a big
no,
what
because that
face?
was imagine what a beehive or like a mud dauber nest looks like to people like this. Right, and especially on banyan trees, they could probably get pretty big, like compared to people.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that? It was a good one, but I'm like, you're not convinced. What's wrong here?
I was thinking that you could use, so let's say there's not a mud dauber, but like the paper wasps, maybe?
Yeah, honestly, anything. I was really thinking
Okay.
like a classic beehive. It doesn't have to be, but there's honey, there's, building material, there's a lot. But that's why I went more toward other stuff, because it seemed like that might be a little silly
No, the honey.
to have like a, yeah.
Oh, that'd be so cool. You could still theoretically like smoke them or something if you had if it was a regular beehive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
But I was also then considering something like a wasp or something would also be crazy scary.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because wasps are wild little predators.
So
Actually, what?
Jonathan Miles.
didn't
Well,
look. I
Jonathan
didn't
Miles
look.
said, "Is this the tiny people situation?" And it's really
It
funny
is.
because it is. I'm very sorry. I thought I recapped that when you got here.
Oh.
I forgot
Did
to
you
mention
write
that
it
the
in the
people were
notepad?
tiny.
Yes.
Maybe
Right? 6
if people were the
inches?
size of fairies from Ferngully living, yeah.
Okay.
But yes, it is a tiny. It's okay. You probably can't
It's
even
okay.
read it on there. That's totally big. But yes, tiny people, big banyan style tree world where there's sort of no up or down. It's just like most of the world right now is banyan tree. People are like 6 inches tall.
We haven't decided what the above or the below is yet.
Exactly, and honestly, I think that exploring both of those will be
Will help.
if this is something that becomes a world that we make adventures in, right?
Yeah.
going down is going to be part of it, and going up is going to be part of
Yes.
it, because you're going to find very different things. I think that's really cool.
Wasps would be terrifying because they're voracious
Absolutely
little
terrifying.
predators.
Yeah.
So, like, what if... Imagine you're just minding your own business and a wasp that's hunting just comes along and finds the Banyan colony. All of your 6 inches, let's say it's like a giant wasp, like one of those the Japanese wasps, like they're almost like 3 inches, like that. Ooh.
Exactly. That's the thing. I'm thinking, that's the other big thing. I'm thinking that wasps, in this case, definitely considering wasps that are much bigger than the people. Not like crazy, but yeah, like one-on-one, it would be like coming across a mountain lion.
Yeah.
You're like, no, that is not a situation you want to be in. There would be things people tell you might help. If you encounter a wasp or whatever, it'd probably have a cool name as well.
Yeah.
If you encounter a mud dauber, or I can't think of a cool
Like
name on the fly.
you have to hope that you can like blend in, because sometimes what they're looking for, if I'm remembering correctly from zoology class, way back when, they're usually looking for dark spots on leaves, and some species will just randomly pounce, just hoping that it's a bug. So if you can
I
blend
see.
in, like green on green or what have you.
Yeah, like you
you're
can
having
camouflage pretty easily. Like there would be ways people would
around
get.
that.
Yeah, people would get pretty good at that. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Jonathan says, if that's the case, I don't even think bigger animals are the issue. Then insects are way more terrifying, like leafcutter ants in the trees. So yes, absolutely. We talked about a few things, but that's the major thing, is like that, or a praying mantis would be. Yeah, praying mantis. That was one of the ones I was imagining, just because. I don't know why, but that is such an iconic bug to attack a tiny thing.
Right?
I'm not sure what it is. I am not sure I want to know what those are. Yeah, so that's what's interesting, is there would be all kinds of things, and bugs would sort of be their animals. Because I'm also considering that it would be insects that would live there, but they would be scaled up a little bit.
Okay.
Like, I want caterpillars to be pretty big.
You can make the people even like a tiny bit smaller. You know?
Well, and that's true. That's why it's like we can sort of change the size of everything. So far,
so actually, this is delving into the world a little bit. If you want to, we can have oversized bugs and just say that that's an oxygen-rich environment here.
I was going to say the same thing.
Oh
Just
my
now
God.
when I was like, oh man, yes. Yeah, so, but I was going to say it because I knew you'd like that.
Oh, yes, I would. So that means, like, I'll have to do some reading, but we could even play around with the size of other creatures and whatnot, make it wild.
Oh yeah,
You know?
That's the main thing. I think we can change a lot of it. Yeah, turd rocket. Maybe giant wasps are massive menacing predators. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm imagining that when you hear it, that's dangerous. Whereas there are giant honeybees more the size of halfling who usually trade honey with the tree civilization and also fear the wasps. I love that idea.
Maybe then...
Because there would potentially also be something that creates something like honey, and I'd probably
Yeah.
just make it honey.
And let's say that the birds are our friends in this world. They have the ability to be that. Like, maybe you want to keep birds around then to help keep insects away. So, like, that's
right.
another thing you need to do is, you want to befriend even like some of the smaller birds. They're small insectivores and whatnot.
So,
Okay.
there's a scene, right?
Yep.
There's a scene where somebody, they ring the bells to call everybody to the town hall and closer to the middle of the banyan tree.
Yeah.
And somebody wearing the mask of the crow people, that you have to wear as part of the official feeding process. The people are crying out to these crow priests, appease or beg the crow god, we'll give him extra if only you can get him to attack the wasp nest.
Yeah.
And basically the people are imploring the person that claims they have some great connection with this being and potentially
Right.
believes that they do, to get a bird to kill the wasps for them. Like, that's the story I want, because to them it's life or death. It's so serious. I don't know. It can sound funny when you start scaling things differently, but suddenly it's so real when it's like, no, why won't this crow help us out,
Oh, yeah, Jonathan, you missed that I mentioned jumping spiders earlier.
Oh, yes, we were talking about how they would
Yeah.
farm spiders and stuff. That would be another one.
But okay, the wasps. So do we want to say that there's like a god? Because I can't imagine actually giving direction to a crow and having it do that.
Not
You
at
know,
all,
like-
right? But that's the interesting thing. The people would pray.
They would still try.
That's part of, and again, I don't know. I'm focusing on that a lot, and it would not have to be this focused on it. I feel like it's sort of coming up a lot. But it would be a part of their culture to consider that birds are something bigger and smarter, part of something bigger than they are.
Yeah.
Almost literally.
Yes.
So, like, whatever that means.
I know, like, they can be trained, but, like, ordering it to go kill a
And
wasp nest
exactly.
is, like, it sounds like a reach.
That's the important thing. That's the part that maybe I didn't make clear enough. The priests are just going to say, well, we need to sacrifice more stuff. And we're gonna tell it, and we're gonna pray, and we're gonna do all these things, and maybe eventually it will kill the wasp nest because it bothers it enough. And then suddenly the people say, well, look, we did it. You know what I mean? I completely agree. I'm not suggesting that the crow does it because they did anything different, but what we know about crows sort of informs our meta view of it. And I don't know, we can make some interesting games happen within it because we know that it's just a crow doing its thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. I find that really interesting. But sorry, Jonathan says, if you look into leafcutter ants, they actually create kingdom with outposts and physical structures.
Yeah.
Keeping the ants at bay from expanding in your territory would be interesting. I was thinking, like, anything building nests at all would be a constant
That's
pain.
wlike, what if you had a termite infestation or something in your tree? You know,
yes,
like,
that's another good one. Like, that would be like an epidemic.
Fuck. Yeah.
The people would have to move out. Sorry, everybody.
Yep.
Cassie dropping the hard F on Easter here. Jeez. No, it's much funnier to me that it's on Easter. So one of the other cool things, this has less to do with this, but I believe it was that we learned, was it crows that could differentiate between quantities? Is that what you're telling me? That was the other thing. I just learned that not only could crows count, but they had sort of different concepts for different amounts of things. So in a sense, they have a sense of numbers. Obviously nothing like we do, and they're not written in any of that, but they differentiate, yeah.
I wanted to think of an idea. Let's say that you are this small person and you're finding, or like, you've realized, oh crap, there's a wasp nest nearby, and let's say we're going to keep going on if we live in the rainforest or something. There's I think a bee-eater hawk or honey-eater hawk, something like that. So maybe we could play off of that. Like, maybe you need to find that hawk, and lure it.
Oh, see, I like that too. Where
and
I was very focused. There's some really cool stuff here. I was very focused on the religious aspect. But no. But we're going to that. That's better for a world where you have adventures. But so Turd Rocket says, we're going to go into that.
Okay.
But Turd Rocket says, maybe there are also large versions of flies, gnats, and mosquitoes who aren't necessarily wicked, but more like the goblins of the world and thought of as pests. They're the
giblins of the world.
And Cole says, the collapse of civilization, literally the collapse of the tree from termites. I love the idea that would be like, there was a fire in London famously.
Yeah.
That's the way people would view it. Like, the whole city burned down. Like, if the termites get in and you can't attack them, there's a story where somebody finds the termites and it's way too late, right? And one of the trees begins to fall apart, and then it's like it spread. It's just like, absolutely, that would be crazy.
That would be crazy.
But what you said, I just wanted to establish that. I do like the idea that if people are adventuring and going to do things, yes, you would be going, and you would mostly run into other insects and things that were trying to attack you. And only for that reason would you have to attack them.
Yes.
But then you said, what did you just say?
Let's say there is a...
You have to go lure the other bird.
Predator, yeah.
So now I'm imagining the part of the story like in Princess Mononoke, where she reads the runes, and she's telling the story of how he has to leave.
Oh yeah, the bones and
she's doing her whole complicated.
They're trying
thing.
to find out if what happens to Ashitaka now that he's been cursed by the demon.
Exactly. I really love the idea that somebody tells a story, sort of an old sage tells a story of what to do. Oh well, there's an old, you can kill a wasp nest as these people, right? But they know it'll take a lot of casualties. It's effectively waging a war, and you just want to avoid it. So there's this story that people have heard, and that somebody has more information on. The everybody, when this person speaks, everybody gets quieter in the room. Yeah. And you just hear the fire crackling, and they're telling you the story of what did you say, the honey eater eagle?
Yeah. Let's call it the honey eagle for now.
Honey eagle, sure.
Honey eagle.
But that's the thing. Imagine, because I don't know if we call it crow either.
Or we gotta give it a more godly, badass name.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, these things are going to be called something because people imagine there's one of them.
Right.
So the thing is, this person tells the story of another being like the thing that these people revere as a god.
Yeah.
That they need to lure. You know what I mean? Like, that makes more sense where
They're like, sometimes we can still hear the cries from their ancient nest.
Exactly.
That's like a tree or two, like a couple trees away, you know.
Far enough away that
Far
sometimes
enough
they hear it, where it's like you have to be in the right place at the right time, and nobody believes you. Oh,
Or
I've heard it.
The wind needs to blow from that direction, like finally you can hear it. Yeah.
And so I really like that idea that people would, because I was thinking, why would people venture out? And it's because it's so dangerous. It's such a frontier, like...
Think about it as a frontier. Absolutely.
There's so little... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but, so Turbo Rocket says, the Great Collapse, I love it. And Jonathan, harvesting spider webs to protect your village would be an interesting adventure. That's another thing. Cassie mentioned how, like, to get some of the, different spider silk or things, you would distract the spiders while you would go and, try to get the...
Have a couple other team members basically take the silk while the spider is distracted with what it thinks is a yummy treat down one of the lines.
Exactly.
Capture lines.
And so it would be like this... I'm imagining... We were watching people shearing sheep in New Zealand and stuff, and I'm imagining now that same kind of assembly line almost, where there are people at one end touching the web, distracting them, and they're trying to, like, keep... Something moved over there.
It's just a recycle.
Scared the crap out of the dog. What was I saying?
Shearing sheep.
Oh, shearing sheep. So
line.
they would have it like... They would have a system where, they pull on the web, and that distracts the spiders to go this way, and they know they have to run. Like, they would, like, kind of continuously loop around so that the spiders had to chase them while people were, getting it. It would be like a thing, it'd be like hurting them.
Yes.
Obviously, sometimes, like, the danger is a spider gets wise or something, and, people die during that because a spider...
If your timing's
set a
off,
trap for you.
If it gets too close to you because you're distracting it, and we know spiders can jump a little bit, like, let's say it's not a jumping spider, it's not those crazy ones. Like, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Exactly. Or, and this is even better, there's a great chance that you're going to get caught in the web. Like, literally get caught. You're running around, dealing with spider web. Eventually you might get caught.
That's true.
Turd Rocket says, spider silk can be very strong. I always remember the urban legend that a shirt woven of black widow silk would be bulletproof. Yes,
cool.
I believe specifically what a lot of people say, or like the way I've seen it phrased is, for how light it is, it has an extremely high tensile strength, and I think those two things together, because if you could get enough of it, it would be that strong, and you'd still be able to wear it because it was so light.
So maybe in this world, then, they can use it as armor instead of wood armor.
Oh, yeah, and exactly. Like, they could use it, because Jonathan Miles mentioned it as defenses, and we talked about some armor. You know what other armor would fit perfectly here?
What?
Mushroom armor.
Oh my god!
Works so well in this world.
My mushrooms!
We don't have to get into it. We're probably going to wrap up here soon.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a quick recap and actually put some stuff in this document.
That's right. It's called Giblin Silk. Thank you.
Giblin Silk.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Something in the world is now called giblins.
That's remember insects and stuff are kind of like the goblins of the world?
Yeah.
Like,
but that's the thing. I just like the name.
It's so
just
cute.
Yeah.
No, that's what they branded. It's Giblin Silk.
It's Giblin. Oh, I can't have to do Giblin Silk. Yeah, I love that so much. Stick bug mounts. Yes, I'm loving that idea too. Go ahead.
Finish your thought.
Oh, just that a lot of different, just like people have special horses that they ride, there would be cultures and different people that have different bugs that they ride and they're famous for, people that ride beetles or something, yeah.
I wanted to go off of that and say the stick bug mounts would be maybe your camo mounts.
Yeah, the
so
stealth
that way,
mounts.
Yeah, your stealth mounts to try and get through the trees because it's so dangerous if you're not camouflaged.
Yeah.
But if you stick with that thing, or even leaf bugs.
Yeah, leaf bugs is another good one.
Yeah.
Oh, pig bug says, oh great, missed almost the whole thing. So actually, you're here at the perfect time because we are going to actually try to do this. We're going to recap some of the stuff we talked about.
Okay.
And I'm going to actually put it in this document and maybe have something. So we have, if people were the size of fairies from Fern Gully, lived in trees, but we're just humans and not fairies.
They have no wings.
6 inches tall.
There's no magic at the moment.
I wrote this in such a weird way, but it as unwieldy as it is, it encompasses what we want to say.
Yes.
If we were using the scale of the world we live in now, the people would be 6 inches tall roughly as an adult if the trees were the same size as our world. But the world is made up of interconnected banyan tree-like trees, which they have trunks, but they almost sprawl out all over, and I feel like they'd be interconnected and growing into each other and just create a network of branches that is effectively the whole world to these people.
Yes. And each banyan tree, each one has kind of like a cup in the middle, so that way you have like a communal area.
Yeah, there's like a natural center of like cities or towns.
Yeah, so I think they would be towns. I imagine them to still be kind of small-ish.
Yeah,
I almost said they're going to be like separate tribes, but like maybe that's too big.
That's the thing.
Tree with different tribes.
I think so. Yeah, I'm thinking that this world that is here is pretty large as far as the amount of people that live in it. I think it's going to be relatively highly populated, even for something as dangerous as it is. But so they have agriculture to some degree.
Yes.
We said a few small things like...
I said like a terrace farm kind
Yeah,
of deal.
some sort of terrace farm. What sort of things would they farm, would you say? Like, I'm imagining like grapes.
Grapes.
Or I guess it's in the rainforest, so grapes wouldn't work.
Yeah,
but
so what... Okay, that's another problem. What would grow there?
I guess they would eat... And so we don't have to worry about that because we were recapping, but we didn't really talk. So agriculture, not necessarily what they would eat, but we did talk about they would farm spider silk.
Yes.
For armor... clothing,
in construction, textiles.
And
pig pug, we were maybe bird mounts. We haven't discussed how much of like bird riding there is.
We were originally going to do more bird riding, and then we moved to potentially having birds be more revered. I think we can do both.
Yeah. I think there would absolutely be a couple outsiders that would take it that far.
Yeah,
and then some of society would be like, you don't ride a bird.
Oh, I like that too, where like you would come across potentially a culture that like has a symbiosis with birds and rides them, especially because they'd be smaller birds. Right, you have a crow that's huge, but they're like, I don't know, riding a titmouse around, or like these tiny little birds, and that are kind of cute too, just to us.
Because they're so cute.
Yeah, so I like that idea.
They're so cute. Okay.
Oh yeah, but so where we talked about where else they'd get construction materials. Some, I'm just going to put this note because we talked about some wood might be harder than others.
Use bark.
Yeah, different types of wood for different things.
I was also thinking, hopping off of the wasp concept that we'll touch on probably again here soon.
Yeah.
Is that so long as there isn't a nest there, you can find paper wasp nests, and before they get too big, I think people would cut them off and then take the paper.
Oh yeah, they would like try to harvest it. They would be able to get something from it.
And that way the wasp it never gets out of control. There's only going to be like one or two, the queen and one worker, just continuously trying to make this one thing.
Okay, so and then they make that into paper?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yes. Okay, so you just decided how they have paper.
That's how they get paper.
So,
I wanted to say that earlier.
Oh no, that's amazing. So yeah, we have agriculture, but we also have I don't know how to put this, but
they can harvest paper.
Harvest, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can harvest paper from paper wasp nests.
There would probably be
acorn.
The trick
is
trebuchets. No, I'm answering a pig
pug.
Okay. There's probably going to be acorn. Yeah, something. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, anything that is shaped, I think we would even go for more things. Anything that is shaped in a way that would be helpful, like acorns. People mentioned acorns as like containers, things like that. Where, yes, because otherwise you'd have to create something.
Yeah.
We also, I don't know. I guess they need metal. I don't know. Can harvest paper from paper wasp nests. The trick is to keep the population low. That's what I was going to put. Paper wasps, jumping spiders as enemies. We also had
small jumping spiders
mantis.
can be like pets, little baby ones. There are some little tiny ones.
And okay, so we had so people that live in these trees, they get paper, revere birds as gods. I guess I should look in the chat here.
Turd Rocket suggested leafcutter bees, which make little sleeping bag structures, which is awesome. And then Pig Pug mentioned morning dew farming, which is, that's so important. Of course, that's going to be the main way that they get water, having a harvest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And because this is currently kind of a heavy oxygen, maybe rainforest biome, that would be an easily achievable thing.
Oh, because there'd be a lot of it. Yes, exactly. That's very good. Yeah, so here's a fact. Spiders have no muscles or tendons. They move based on the pressure of hydraulic fluid regulated by their bodies.
Yep.
Totally forgot about that. Also means that getting a spider brings you closer to the technological advancement that is hydraulics. Jonathan says there's a dude who used spider webs with spider hairs to stop his ants from escaping their habitats. So it could ward away bugs and their pests. toad rocket. Maybe they trick the spiders into eating molasses or something to slow them down while they harvest the silk. I love any tricks like that.
Yeah.
If you think about it, in my opinion, I love exploring the legs up people would try to get in any sort of economy like that.
In coal, I have no idea.
What's the sap like in a banyan?
Poke on a banyan tree.
I don't know about...
No. Looking it up.
Yeah, well, there's 10 things you need to know about banyan trees. So the main thing is they don't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to be banyan, but it's very similar.
Yes.
Is one of more of 750 species of fig trees, right? So
Cool.
maybe there's a fruit that grows like all over all the trees. You know.
I remember there was this one banyan tree. There was that they allowed to have fruit, and it looked like just big sausages, basically. They were huge.
Yeah, just enormous.
It looked like somebody had some giant sausage just hanging around.
I didn't know this. They're the world's biggest trees in terms of the area they cover. The biggest one alive covers 4.7 acres and can shelter 20,000 us people, not
Holy
tiny
cow.
people.
Us people.
They're ecological linchpins. They produce vast crops of figs that sustain many species of... This is amazing. We should do this first.
We should.
Birds, fruit bats, primates, and other creatures.
All right.
There are more things, but what were we looking for? There was something specific.
Oh no, this sounds like a really good starting point actually for a little microcosm in the trees. You know.
Yeah, I love
Banyan
that.
tree is good.
Sounds like cicada mounts would be a requirement, or
A
bird
little bit
mounts they
bigger.
mentioned. Yeah. Acorn trebuchets, and that's the thing. A big secret, I think, to doing something like this is figuring out what you want, like a trebuchet or metal, right? I want to bring metal into it because I think they need metal tools to be working with wood. That's kind of like how it works.
I mean, we did it without.
We did
without.
And that's the thing. But I'm considering figuring out, giving them metal and then deciding how. That's the point. Is like, in a way, some of the things I would want, I would maybe want metal, basically. Yeah. We're not going to add it yet, but like a rubber equivalent is a good example. Cole said the big concern I have with the trebuchet is you need rope. Yeah. Now there are plenty of plants you can get fiber from and stuff, but that's a good example where like some of those would be real and some of them wouldn't be as real. Stone tools. That's what I mean. Like there's no stone, no wood, no metal, no nothing.
The banyan trees, they're the little roots basically that come down from the trees. Like those would be rope right there.
Absolutely, yeah, like perfect rope, stuff like that. Yeah, no, and I do like that idea that they would have access to ropes and things. But yeah, so so we were going over things. Morning dew farming, that's where they would get water.
We talked about the wasp adventure. Pig Pug didn't get to learn.
Yeah. So we can recap that. The one idea for a reason to venture out.
One reason to venture out. Maybe somebody is doing some scouting. They've sighted wasps in the area, so they found this big nest that's already really in place, maybe nearby. So an elder, James is suggesting, is casting the stones and telling a tale of the fact that a tale of this great eagle that every once in a while we can still hear its screeches from beyond the mists in the distance. But this a warrior once brought this eagle to us, and it took down the whole nest, and we saw it flying away with honey dripping down its front, and comb in its beak.
During Wasp War 1.
Wasp War 1.
Wasp War 1 is when they got it. No, but exactly, yeah.
So, Cole, the mushroom thing, since it has
six. Absolutely. That's the thing. We can go as long as you want to. We can save it for another time.
I would like to save it for another time. I gotta kind of come back to that one.
No, and that's perfect.
Really cool.
The major thing I want to say, we touched earlier briefly on the fact that we'll make a lot of things. We'll just make stuff because we're inspired and want to make a world in the trees, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know where it goes. The mushroom thing we've made before, and Cassie has considered placing it in a few things, but we've talked a lot about it and had some ideas. But that's what it is. We're kind of seeing if something like that fits here. There would probably be mushrooms. We don't need that idea. I just wanted to point out the fact that that's an example we're doing. We might take something we created separately and put in here.
Maybe the mushroom is instead a society that's on the ground.
Well, and that's fair. I guess what I'm saying is no matter what, there are going to be mushrooms in this world. They don't have to be armor, but I like the idea. They'd be some sustenance. Because like you said, in a rainforest, what would you eat? Well, a lot of your protein, right? Are mushrooms protein? Oh, beans are protein.
Beans are protein. So
I was
honestly,
thinking,
they'd have to be harvesting bugs. That's
your
main source of protein, probably.
But basically I imagine there would be areas that were more closed off and were more cave-like, and that those had had potentially bioluminescent mushrooms. Like, there's just going to be mushrooms. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
But yeah, it may or may not be that.
We'll
A story of
figure it
Honey Eagle that came and helped destroy a lot of wasps. And then, I wanted to add... under agriculture, we talked about having honeybees.
Oh, yeah.
Honeybees and some symbiosis with...
crows, right? Or you already mentioned that.
Oh, yeah, and just some symbiosis with them specifically.
Or we could say symbiosis with birds, I think, in general.
And then Pigpuck says, are the trees the primary biome? Do they venture on the ground at all? So there's no ground. And absolutely, like...
We haven't talked about the ground. We haven't addressed the ground. We don't know what it is yet.
Exactly. In a sense, to these people, there's no such thing as the ground.
So, yes, the tree is basically the biome
the whole world.
Is the world right now.
What if the crows bring them metal or take them to a grouping of trees inside the cave so metal is accessible? I do like the idea that metal is accessible somehow. We're I suppose, not going to touch on that now. Yeah, go ahead.
We should still write down... Somebody did mention that they like shiny things. That's probably what crows bring.
No, that's true. Oh, and that's what I mean. I do like that, but we were basically... It seemed like considering not adding... Because if you think about it, if you have metal, you have to smelt metal. Which means you have to be really hot. Which means in a tree, you don't have to smelt it. There are a lot of really good reasons to find a stand-in for metal.
Yeah.
Because of the heat. So I totally agree that crows would bring metal stuff, but I don't think that would necessarily mean they'd have metal tools.
Yeah, and Aesir, they probably will find out about the ground. Like, I don't know. I got some ideas rolling around, but we'll have to come to them another time.
Oh yes, yeah. I wanted to go through a few more things. Jonathan mentioned the grounded. A few people mentioned that. I meant to look into it. I always love a good tiny people game.
Yeah.
Not flat earthers, no earthers is what Pigpug said. I missed that earlier. Shelf mushrooms would be like a giant terrace. Exactly. I love the idea of all the different types of mushrooms we can bring in.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a tree city with stone tools. They are a wonder and anomaly. I should read the whole thing. A wonder and anomaly to everybody because only only they will brave the ventures into the ground where the real giants live. So I do like the idea that some societies have different levels of advancement. I really like that. We talked about some might all ride ants, whereas some other ones might have mushroom armor. Some other ones might ride birds. That was one.
I think that's important to have that difference.
Exactly. I like having all kinds of different peoples coming together. But specifically one with stone tools somehow,
Yeah.
Because I like that, playing with the technological advancement of the civilizations, basically. It's a little difficult that they don't know about the ground at all, not going there because of danger, but not to know it exists is hard. Now, that's what's interesting. What I want to say is they could eventually get to the ground. It would be like going under the water for us, like the deepest part of the ocean, where it's like you'd have to go and go and go and live and camp and go and live and, and eventually you might find what is the ground.
And theoretically, let's say, because this is a kind of a new civilization, until somebody writes it down or unless oral tradition stays steady enough, people will not know that the ground exists. Like, once your great-grandmother passes away, unless she's told you the stories of the ground, you don't know the ground exists.
Exactly.
If you're growing up.
Even if somebody a long time ago has discovered it. And that's a lot of what I'd like to play with in the world. So if you were in the world, that would be the theme of some of the stuff. So part of the point is not knowing what the ground is because that seems like part of the fun.
Yeah, you get to explore it.
Exactly, because it would get darker and stuff. There could be parts that are water. You could go crazy with what you could find down there, and I think it would be like having infinite dungeons in the way we're used to it. It's a little difficult, yeah. Oh, Acer said, some of us find it hard to believe the Earth isn't round. Acer, think of it like Horizon Zero Dawn. Maybe they started on the ground, but something forced them upward. That's another good example.
I'm playing that game right now. I don't know why they've been forced upward yet. I'm so excited.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, okay.
Well, no, but yeah, exactly right.
I don't know the conspiracies or deeper story.
But specifically, I think the idea that, like you said as well, they lost a lot of the old ways. They don't know why, because that was like advanced technology, and now they're more, tribal and like hunter-gatherer. That's all right. So basically, I think we're going to end there. We usually go about an hour, went even longer. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. We didn't write a ton of stuff down, but the plan, I think, is now we're going to try to do these and then continue to build on worlds so that people can follow us, put a little more in the docs. So what it seems like that's going to mean is potentially firming some of this stuff up a little bit, the writing and distributing it, and then when people join the stream the next time we do on this world, they can sort of catch up and we can keep doing it.
That'll be good.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We sat across from each other, which I think was helpful. I got to talk sort of at Cassie, and everybody got to see us.
Yeah, hopefully that was more enjoyable. I didn't look at the camera a lot, but...
Yeah, I think it's cooler, yeah.
James.
And I think that's okay. Hopefully that's right. I think it's better than us looking at each other this way, at the very least.
Absolutely.
Hopefully the sound was good. So, yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We will see you next time, probably next Sunday. Catch everybody later.
Catchphrase, catchphrase.
Catchphrase, catchphrase. Can't forget.